Welcome to The Human Edge. This week's guest is Mark Dowds. Mark is a Northern Irish entrepreneur who has also been a priest. Amazing combination. This was a fantastic conversation. We talked about religion. We talked about death. We talked about how to live your best life and everything in between. I loved it. I hope you do too. And if you do, please like, please share, please subscribe, all of that stuff. It'd be really helpful. Thank you. I did want to begin on a morbid subject, which is death.
Yeah.
Last time we sat down together about a year ago.
Yeah.
One of the things you told me was happening in your life, and we can talk about the others in a bit, was you found a lump on your neck, which subsequently was identified as cancerous. I'm imagining you had to kind of think about your own mortality maybe then in ways that you hadn't done before. So what was the thought process at the time?
When I first found the lump in my neck, just for context, I've never had any ailment really of any form. I've broken a leg. I've done all the things that boys do typically, and of adventures. But I've never had anything scary happen to me ever. So somewhat in life I probably have felt I execute and deliver a lot, but when this happened, I had this moment to go, I'm human and I'm vulnerable. And so at that point, when it was just a lump, the doctor thought it was just a cyst, but in my gut I felt there was something more. So it started to play in my head a little bit, but at that point I realized, okay, life is a little bit more vulnerable than what was, and so I started to think about what I was going to do in my life. I'm very clear on what I'm doing and what I've done, but I started to probably think at a deeper level. So because I've just crossed over into the 50 side of things as well, I've got this.
You and me both.
Yeah, and I go like, well, now this second half of life, I'm going, okay, if things like this emerge, this is it could be, I want to make the most of this next season, so I want to make sure that I'm not wasting time or doing silly things that are just helping everybody else. I want to realize that I've got a mission in life and I want to make sure I accomplish that and take no prisoners with it.
Yeah. What is the mission in life?
For me, ultimately, it's been around making sure that, I would say modeling a certain lifestyle of what's possible. I would say that's part of my life, so that someone and other people can get inspired to take risks, do things they love, and make a difference in the world. So I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, and throughout that season, I've always had a problem that I've wanted to solve or a mission that I'm behind within it. And so that for me has really been the opportunity to inspire others to bring out the best of who they can possibly be. So push myself in sports, push myself in business. And my hope is that through that other people don't settle and can recognize that they can really live a full life.
Yeah. So obviously, you've got kids, and I can understand how you will model kind of certain behaviours for your kids. But in terms of having an impact on the wider world around you and modeling what you've just talked about, how do you go about kind of showing people in the kind of broader circle around you what's possible?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, someone had told me sort of like basically that they were like, well, I suppose in context of this, I grew up in a reasonably traditional Christian church, and there's this verse that said, the glory of God is displayed in a person who's fully alive. And I think that settled within me. And for whatever context or framework the listeners have in that, it's for me it was, I've been given a life and I have the opportunity to live the most of it. And when I look around, so when I'm sitting on the subway this morning, I'm watching all the people that are there, and you get the odd person that looks happy, but they're rare. or I watch people and listen to people on a regular basis that live in a discontent lifestyle, wishing they had done things that they had, or living in, with bitterness, or holding things against others. And I wanted to live a life that basically would say that I won't do that. I will get hurt, but how am I going to deal with it? I'm going to do business, and sometimes I'll succeed and sometimes I'll fail. But how do I handle that? And so for me, my hope is that I model some of that, and also some of the wildness of life. I definitely have a penchant for risk, but I have a little bit more than that, in the sense of that as much as I drive hard and I would make money and I'll do stuff, that's not my driver. The end goal for me is not finance. The end goal for me is a full and rich life. And so I err towards that. So my mom will say things like, you live a charmed life, or my friends will look and go, you're away again. I had one of my leadership team last week say, why do you always want to push the boundaries? Because I'm doing a couple of adventure races and big challenges next year. And so I'm always wanting to see how far it can go, and I suppose where the hope is that the people who meet me or spend time with me get somewhat inspired, even if they think I'm a little bit mad.
I love all that, and it really kind of resonates with me at the moment. I was telling you before that I have a 10-year-old who's very, very anxious at the moment and is consumed by his anxiety. One of the things we've talked about is he's forgetting to live his life. At the risk of being a cliche, life is so precious. We only have one of them, depending on what you believe. Most people believe we only have one life, and it sounds like your perspective on life is to live it to its fullest. Yeah, very much so. It's and I've learned. I think I've learned over the years of what that really means. I think probably when I was younger, it meant sort of squeeze every moment out of everything, But now I think, say, the second half of life, I'm now learning to say, okay, well, it's not all about getting the most things done. It's also being able to enjoy and be content in every situation that I find myself in. So that would probably be the biggest piece for me. I tend not to worry a lot, stress a lot. When things happen in health, it was like, goodness, it's impossible not to. But I tend to look at life and sort of take it on the chin, what comes at me, and then learn to face what's coming at me each day. Years ago, I read a book, Tuesdays with Morrie. Did you ever read it? No.
It's awesome. There were several books, but the one that sort of hit, and it was about this guy called Morrie. It's a small book, it's an easy read. I forget the author, but it was about a guy who was facing his last few months of life, and it was about a guy who would visit him every Tuesday, and would sit and do this. And one of the questions he had was, because it was as it got close to the end of his life, Morrie was in a lot of pain. So the question is that how can you get up, get on with life, and even though you're going to die, and you're living in pain, and his line was brilliant. He just said, "I wake up in the morning, I feel my pain, I acknowledge it, I sit with it, and I get up and get on with life." And I think there's something about that where we can allow our pain or allow the stress or worry of life or the things that could come in, all the possible things of tomorrow that we can borrow from, can weigh us down, or we can just acknowledge it and then just get on with it.
Yeah, I love that. That's a beautiful sentiment. So one thing I don't quite understand is, so it sounds like you had a zest for life pre-diagnosis. And nothing much changed from that perspective after you had the diagnosis, but yet you felt you had a greater degree of vulnerability in a way that you'd never had before. So It sounds like the diagnosis gave you a subtle shift of perspective, but I'm still not clear, because it's to me it sounds like nothing much changed in the way that you want to approach life.
No, there was probably, I think the word you used there was a little nudge though. There was a little wake up. So in January, when I actually got the phone call saying, "Hey, Mark, you have cancer,"
Yeah.
it was that was a moment where I was on a ski slope. Well, actually, I was having a beer at the edge of the ski slope, if truth be told, and so I was staring into the mountains for a while,
Yeah.
sort of thinking. My first phone call was to my son, saying, "Hey," because he had known that there could be possible news, but ultimately, really, where it led me to is that some of those things that I still held for tomorrow, I just brought them into today.
And what were they?
One of them was I've always wanted to live by the ocean. It's actually would have been one of my dad's dreams as well, and my dad never got to do it, unfortunately. And so this is one of the things I wanted to do, and whether that's for a season or for life, I don't know. But I thought, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
I've had a partner with Louise for the last 2 years, and I thought, I've been sitting on the fence with that as well. I was going like, well, you know what, I could, those things that are tomorrow, why am I waiting to get on with it? There were a few things in work that I was probably restricting myself on, where I am my best is when I'm out in the wild. I was beginning to contain myself in a little bit of a box at work, so I'm probably a little bit out of, I don't know, guilt or what should be done. I'll read books, what people will say, there's certain styles, is you be in the offices, what you do with your staff every day and so on. But problem is, if you put me in an office every day,
that's not where you thrive.
It's not where I'm my best, actually. And I shook that box a little bit and so I got rid of those shackles, and I went out into the wild again and was living the life that really where I'm best at. And even everybody in the company, I went to my leadership team not long ago and said, "I'm really sorry that I haven't been in the office as much as maybe you'd want." And they went, "Nope, you're completely fine. You stay out." Because when I'm living life and doing when I'm truly being Mark, it all works.
And for the benefit of the business as well.
Yeah. So
and there's such a lesson in there as well, because we all live life at times in the world of should.
Yeah.
Because we see this on social media, we read this. This is how I should run my company, or this is how I should do whatever it is, and we don't listen to our own intuition, our own wisdom, right?
Yep.
And it sounds like what the diagnosis gave you was, actually, I need to start listening to what's inside more.
Yeah. I think that's one of those moments where I went to the mountaintop again, had a little bit of a look around and going, what am I doing that's not, bringing great benefit to the world? What am I doing that's not bringing me joy? And what am I doing that just seems that somebody else could be doing? Yeah. So I did get rid of a few things. I got rid of a few things at work. I got rid of a few things and projects that I was involved in, and I've got a little bit more disciplined on saying no. I might have part of, I would say, it's probably a benefit, and as well as a curse sometimes, is that probably my heart is bigger than my hands. I love to help people, and I see opportunities to help others be great and help them to be successful. But then I realised that actually includes time, and I have a restriction on that, or a limited amount of that. Yes. So I'm trying to optimise as much as I can. So so there's probably some people haven't seen me for a while, and there's places that I would have frequented that I haven't been for a long time, and that's just because I'm getting on with what brings me joy at the moment. Yeah,
long may that continue.
Yeah, thank you.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that often there's something about the human experience where it takes a near-death experience, or it takes a glimpse at our own mortality in order to come back to the things that are most important to us.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is. Do you have any theories about that?
Well, for me in January, it was just in that season that I went through, it was just realizing, well, I mean, we don't really know how long we've got. You know, and this is not to be completely morbid, because I genuinely am in the second half of life, and I'm not living in a genuine worry about tomorrow. But I don't know how long I've got.
Yeah.
You know, I had recent scans. I went through treatment on cancer, and I've come out the other side, and scans are clear and all of that. But it came once. It could come again.
Yeah.
And I don't know that. So I definitely want to live more in the present and the now, and just sort of, again, give the world everything of what I've got. You know, I genuinely do believe that I'm put on this world for a purpose, and that if I live in that, I'm a gift to the world, and as others are to me. And so that's where I'm trying to live in that sweet spot. But there was definitely a part where my team, my fiancée now, others will refer to me sometimes as going like, you're just a machine. Like I get stuff done, and I can get a lot done in a very short order. So because I'm very decisive, and I'm very bold, and say I'm willing to take an element of risk. But that moment was realizing again, well, I may be, but I'm wrapped in skin.
Yeah.
You know, I am definitely human.
Yeah.
And vulnerable like everybody else.
Like everybody else. I'm curious about the concept of risk, or the perspective you have on risk. And there are different kinds of risk, clearly, but I think what stops many people from doing what they want to is a perceived risk to what will people think of me. It's a risk to their ego ultimately. And it sounds like you've been able to, or maybe you've been able to move beyond that. I was going to say move beyond that. Maybe you've never had to think, or maybe you've never thought in those terms.
Yeah, I have. I mean, there are definitely seasons of life, obviously, in growing up and doing that. When I was younger, I did live life, and I certainly lived at large and had all the fun in the world. But probably my early goals would have been very materialistic. It was like money, car, whatever it was, all those usual things. But I had an element of success when I was around 21 years old, and that was enough success to wake me up. And where I started to ask myself the question is that, you know, really, is there more to life than this? So I think I'd had that sort of existential crisis at 21 when some have it at 50. So there's definitely an element there that was a bit of an awakening for me.
So are you saying like life, you realise at the age of 21, life is too short to be worrying about stuff you can't control, for example, how other people think of you. So your capacity from that point to today to get stuff done is because you don't really think too much about the perceived risk of making a bold request of somebody or starting a new business. It's not a risk in the sense of jumping out of a plane would be a risk.
No, and there's a little bit of what I've said earlier about living the fullness of life in the midst of this, is that in my earlier days, friends and family would have asked me sort of, what do you not get? And in the sense of, because most people were accumulating enough money or building wealth for things. They had a perception of that life would be is that I make enough money to get a deposit on a house and then to buy a home and have enough then to do all it. So there was an incremental development or growth that included the financial piece of that and steadiness. Not to say that anything of all of that is wrong, but that as a goal and a purpose in itself is severely lacking. Whereas if you have a deeper purpose, the rest can follow. and you can have good increment, you can have good planning
Yeah.
in the wake of those things that happen. So when someone would ask me in those earlier days, I was sort of like, what is it in your head, or what are you not getting? My trite line back then was, things break, memories last forever. And I've never really lost that. One of my mentors, friends in life, a guy called Jim McNeish, really, he called out one of those attributes or sub-personalities of who I am was really he would refer to the story maker. He said to me, you'll do anything to make and create a good story. And which is really interesting for me, because I love sitting there with people, I love having stories, I love entertaining and making people laugh.
Yeah.
And so I hadn't really acknowledged that underlying character within myself that will do things so that I have a story to tell myself or someone else.
Yeah, and I love, because we all think of these days in terms of the importance of storytelling. But you can only tell stories if they're made, right? And the best stories told are the stories about ourselves. And what you're saying is you need to have these experiences in order to make the stories, to be able to tell them.
Yeah. A lot of people spend the majority of their time honing their pitch, or getting everything down, or working on their resume, or getting the story correct in that way. Where I've spent more of my time, if I see an opportunity that seems interesting or wild, I'll have a crack at it.
And it doesn't matter if you fuck it up. It doesn't matter if you look silly. The important thing is to have a go and create the experience, no matter what the outcome.
Yeah, my first failure not my first failure in life, but my first failure, there's many of those, first failure really in business, or certainly in my own business as an entrepreneur, was I pretty much lost everything I owned. It was back in 2000, whenever the dot-com bust happened, the tech world just ended overnight, and so funding disappeared. There's lots other interesting stories behind this one, but
which we need to uncover too.
But in the middle of that, it really was I was at the lowest of the low. Really, I'd lost everything I owned. I lost my job. I was in a new country with a temporary visa, and 2 days later, my son was born. So he was Sean's firstborn, and my daughter came 2 years later. But at that moment, when you're in a new country, not long married, and you find all of that, it was like my sort of joke about the thing now is I sort of tried was that my son came out of fetal position and I went into it. So, and it wasn't far off. But in the middle of the depths of that, I had to face the good Northern Irish guilt as well, which was, in Northern Ireland, if you're, basically, if there's all these stories about, crabs and trying to crawl out of a bucket, and and the story goes, you never need to worry because there's always been a crab's going to pull him back in. He's never going to get free. So there's that idea of if you break out and you go free, is that it's there's a lot of people sort of watch and wait for you to fail.
And want you to fail.
And some won't. Some just for some reason prefer to live in that hole of pity and self-despair, and certainly hate people or don't like people that have spread their wings and seem to have found joy in life and energy.
So you had all that going on, in addition to the people back home. Now I feel like I'm being very crab-like with my hands here. But so kind of all that going on, as well as having lost everything, in a new country, visa issues, son's just been born. What's the mentality though? So the mentality that you've talked about throughout the conversation so far, always looking for the positives in life. How did you find them at that point?
Well, at that point, I got some coaching, and there was a statement made that was failure is only feedback, and that gave me that reframed not just that moment, but how I look at risk and how I look at life. Is that we all trip up and fall. Most of us have tried to learn how to ride a bike, and none of us did it without falling off. And in some ways, when you do a business, at least when you're riding a bicycle, you can control most things. When you're running a business or taking a risk at that level of category, you have 100 things in the world that are changing all at the same time, whether it's the competitive landscape, the markets, everything at once, or the people that work with you or for you. So as those things change, you never know whether you're going to truly succeed at something or whether it will fail. But the one thing that resides through all of it is that no matter what that outcome is that you get better. The old statement, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So whatever way you frame it. But for me, I've become a very curious person in life. So in leadership meetings with my own team, most of the time I'll be the one listening for the majority of the time, in the hope that I can make a good decision. I remain curious about seeing what else is going on before I make something bold. I'm okay to make a bold decision, or if certainly things would go into groupthink, I'll choose to move forward because it's probably better than staying still. That could be the mistake in itself. But I think recognizing that our everyday in life is a little bit of feedback to be able to become better, stronger, or more us. That's been one of the pieces of life that really does give me energy to get up and go again, because I'm involved in quite a lot, and there are things all around me go wrong on a daily basis, and many people on any given day, some of the news that I get or things I hear wouldn't sleep that night. But I think that part of life and knowing that framework really helps. But also that I hold a lot lightly. If money is taken, if money is stolen, I've had all of this taken from me, and it's hurt, and I've had all of those things happen to a significant degree. But when that's not my goal and my life outcome, you get on with it.
And there's something about the getting on with it that I'm really interested about, because in order to make change in the world or to change yourself, you can have the best of intentions, but until you take action alongside that intention, that commitment to change, nothing will happen. But by the same token, when you're in the pit, as if I can put it like that, as you were in that moment, you can have the framework that failure is feedback, and it's an opportunity for growth, but you still need to do something to take action. So how were you able to do that, having lost everything?
I think there's the pragmatic choice that we have, I think, on every day that we wake up, is that what do I want to live? Sometimes folks will get stuck in what's true or what's not true. Is someone a thief? Are they not a thief? Did they hurt you? Did they not? Whatever. But then we all have our choice of behavior to react or engage with those things. And I probably err to the side of going, what's helpful? Because one of the things I do know is that if I choose to live and hold bitterness against someone, it will hurt me, it will rob me, it'll gain no one will get any benefit. There's never a moment where you wake up and I've gone, I want to go hang out with my really bitter friend. Most of us wake up and go, I'd like to actually have some energy, meet someone that can inspire me, and that's brutally honest and transparent. So I think so helpful behavior is I have my life to live, and I can choose to stay in the pit, get up and go again, and Probably, some people would say, well, face shame. I probably don't. There's not much that I've done in life that I'm ashamed about. Most so there's the things that in life that have not worked or fallen apart or have all been not been because I haven't tried and given my best. So I think just getting on and pushing on, because there are times whenever, if it's been in, on a bicycle, because I love mountain biking, where I've gone in for a race and it hasn't worked, or your chain's fallen off or something's broken, then it's not all my fault, but there's times I want to get back on and go again. So I suppose what I'm saying is that I have a choice of my behaviour and I have a choice in the mindset of which I want to hold. And I suppose I've developed a certain sense of mental resilience. And also what battles are worth fighting. There are certain things that happen going, is it worth me fighting against or fighting for, or do I just take something on the chin, learn and move on?
Changing tack a little bit, one of the things that I want to kind of build with this podcast is for the audience to understand that no matter how successful any of my guests are, they're still as human as the rest of us, with the same insecurities that we all have. What I'm curious about now, you kind of come across a really centered, really confident guy. So what insecurities do you still have?
I was talking about this with actually another successful entrepreneur yesterday, is that I still find myself in a room and going like, what am I doing here? So whether that's
not every room, I'm assuming.
Oh, not every. Every so often I end up in a room of famous people or very successful people, and I go, and it's I suppose the imposter. Yeah. So I remember that little piece going on. I just go, well, I'm just this young kid from a little town in Northern Ireland.
It takes you back to your childhood.
But then you remember that each one of them in the room, grew up in a little town or a little apartment. That's or somewhere. Yeah. And so to be in that room is not because you've necessarily made all the money in the world or have had the greatest fame, but a lot of the time you're in the room because you've got a personality. People want to be around you, and you're honest. That's so a lot of the core pieces of life actually are the things that get you into the room.
Yeah, I love that story. And I'm sure that's right. For no matter how much kind of fame or celebrity or success people have, they will sometimes find themselves in a situation which makes them feel uncomfortable, feel like an imposter.
Yeah.
And it's like you're no different to the rest of us in that respect.
No.
Yeah. And when was the last time that happened?
Probably 2 weeks ago. I was in a room with some of the band from U2.
Now we're name dropping here. Carry on.
The Taoiseach, ex-president of Ireland. There was Michael Flatley in the room. From Lord of the Dance. I had basically it was the Irish who's who.
Yeah.
And I'm in this room going, what am I doing here? And I can.
What are you doing there?
I was invited. I've got to know some of those people and I really respect them. And I would say the person who invited me, who was the organizer of the event, has known me for maybe 25 years. Mm-hmm. And back then, I suppose I was in the room then. And I've behaved myself, maybe. That's where I've kept my nose clean over the years. I've never stolen from anyone. I do everything to respect the people that I meet and to esteem everyone around me. I've been hurt like everybody else, but hopefully I've behaved when when that has happened.
But it's more than that, though, isn't it? You know, you're invited not because you've kept your nose clean over the years, but because you've contributed, because you've made an impact.
That was why I was in the room. Yeah, when it was weird to get a mention, and so for that is that the reason I was in that room at that time was because I was being esteemed for coming back from North America to Northern Ireland and giving all I've got really to help develop and build that community. You know, because I feel like I'm a bit of an ambassador for home. I've always loved it. I've always respected it as much as many times it didn't me. But there's something magical about it, and I give a lot to support the sort of the future of Northern Ireland. So I grew up in the Troubles. I was very actively involved in peace and reconciliation when I was younger, and now I've had the opportunity over the last 10 years is to more contribute from an ideation, economic, startup, infrastructure, you know, basically, and connections, bringing North American connections in as well. And so as a result of that, it's had a little bit of a ripple effect, and there's, which I feel very proud of.
So you should. So you should. It'd be remiss of me not to talk about responsible. So, can you tell me a little bit about what you've created there and the mission of the business?
Yeah, 4 years ago, I was working as a VC, so in the venture capital world. My background has really been, I've been a founder 5 times, a VC 3 times, so it's the startup world, startup skill world is everything that I know. I'm from both sides of the fence, or I know most about. And so 4 years ago, when I was on the other side of the fence of venture capital, I started to get itchy feet again about being a founder. I behave and act. I'm more me when I'm on the founding side because I love to solve problems. I love to take on difficult problems. And at that time, in the midst of COVID, everything emerged again about the environment for me. I had written papers when I was at university about environment and the importance and about animal rights and all of these things as well. And it started to surface again in me. I think I had a little bit more time to think. I think most of us were locked in a room. We all became a little bit creative, or reading books that maybe we wouldn't normally do. And I wanted to do something to make a difference for climate and environment. So I did a deep dive into the world of fashion. I was analysing a company that was in that world, and ultimately where it led me to was to recognise that the fashion world had a lot of waste in the world. It was a very heavy contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. It was a pollutant in every form. And then when I looked at what was happening from a waste perspective in some of whether it's the deserts of Chile or in Ghana, we were creating these Everests of discarded clothes. So wanted to start a company that would help solve that problem and develop something of what's the new trendy word today is a circularity. How do we keep things going around like this rather than manufacture and dispose? So it was to go sort of against the current culture of fast fashion and to say, can I take something that is of value? You know, it's not exactly the old heritage heirloom, but in the same way as many years ago, you know, you had something passed from generation to generation or from person to person. How can we begin to view what we have in our wardrobe as somewhat valuable enough for someone else to wear it? And so created a technology company that would basically take all the friction out of getting things out of someone's wardrobe and basically into the secondary market for others to wear.
And the secondary market being the likes of eBay and Vinted and others. Yeah,
so I basically supply the big marketplaces with really interesting products that are a little bit more desirable. Because when you go shopping for something that's been worn or you choose to shop secondhand, it can be actually quite difficult to find the things that you want. So what I've been working on is unlocking those things that people are searching for and wanting to find so that they can have something that is of great value in the sense that they can have the brands they want for less the price, but also keeping these products in circulation for longer. So yeah, I've been at it. Excuse me. I've been working on Responsible now for this January. Will be 3 years officially. As much as I was working a little bit behind the scenes on it before, and I've got a small 20-person team, mostly in Belfast. My business partner is in New York, however, and one of my other leadership teams in Florida. But everyone else is Belfast based, and we're actually doing really well. Our technology now, if you're in the UK, we launched an app called Haru, Haru, Help and Reuse. So it's downloadable on the app stores, and it ultimately helps people to get some value from what's in their closet, takes out all the friction and uses the latest technologies from basically from image recognition through to AI and auto listing and clever pricing in the background. So it's fun. We've created something of value today, and we've got a very healthy runway. I've got great investors. Barclays have a fund called Sustainable Impact Capital, which is environmentally focused as well. So I have folks like them that really have been supportive and backing us along with others. So it
sounds amazing. And in 5-10 years' time, if you can forecast that far ahead, what's it going to look like?
My hope in 5 years' time from now, what I've created is a platform that can enable, basically can ultimately scale the resale market. Take what has been sort of a cottage industry, sort of from bedroom to front door, to something that's been professionalized, so that you don't have to wait 7 days to get something that you found on a platform, but you can get next day shipping like you can on Amazon, that you get something that's authenticated, that you can wear something that's clean. So I can buy you sneakers, but they don't need to be smelly. I just want to professionalize that part where purchasing something that has been used before is not something that's substandard in any form. Because the reality is, if we buy something that has, that is not new, it will have 70% less impact on the environment.
Yes.
So ultimately, the big goal or vision of the company is that through partnerships and commerciality, hopefully we get the large scale where we get to the point where I'm able to recognize that we're reducing the consumption of new items by making available those things that are desirable in the second market.
Yeah. Is it going to become a consumer-facing platform, or is it still going to be in the kind of background business to business?
It's more business to business. We do have a consumer-facing piece, which is what I mentioned, Haru. So it's substantial in its own right, but the bigger opportunity with that on scale is really to work with business to business, so we can power other resellers, or there's other businesses that today sell new that want to also reach out to their customer base so that they can actually get involved in the secondary market as well, so that our technology can enable a brand or a retailer to promote to their customer base, saying, trade in your old, and get some value for that before buying something new. And when they do that, these retailers can choose to sell it themselves, or I'll trade it on eBay or on Amazon or Depop or wherever. So they ultimately take all the friction they can promote to their customer base to do something good without having any hassle in their day-to-day business. Because I do know that retailers and brands and so on today aren't going to redirect their efforts. They struggle all in their own right to make things through from day to day. So I'm coming beside them to enable them to even do better.
Yeah, I think we might have to pause for a second, Mark, because lunch is arriving, but not for us. That's all right, Chris. Don't worry.
That's all right.
Yeah, just go straight through. That's all right. We have an editor, so it's fine. We'll edit you out. So, Crystal and Pat, this is their place.
Awesome.
And Pat's upstairs baking away. Crystal, Mark, Crystal.
Nice to meet you. Sorry, like this.
No, it's all good. We all got to eat.
Yeah, that's right. just so I can tell Mike when he's editing, where are we in terms of time?
43.
43 minutes, okay. Perfect. All right. Thanks, Mike. So where was I? So what many people may not know about you, right? You've been a VC 3 times, you've been a founder 5 times. If I remember right from when we met last time, you've also won the cloth.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tell me that story.
Yeah, so if I go back to that early piece I mentioned, when I was 21 years old, I had this epiphany that there must be more to life than this. That led me, at that particular time, I was working with my dad, worked in the family business, and it was growing, and I worked really well with my dad. I was in the middle of it, and I was beginning to earn decent money and have all of that. But there was something deep inside of me that really wanted to go to a deeper level in meaning in my own life. And so I decided to leave the family business. I went to university. I think at that time my mum said, "Are you sure, son, because you've never read a book in your life?" I was asked to leave from school when I was 15. I was more interested in business than books, and I was a little bit too creative for school. Never fit into the institution that well. But I decided to go to university, and I initially studied theology, and then I layered on an additional degree of divinity, which allowed me to study in Greek and Hebrew and the original texts, in the pursuit of really finding why am I here, what's the deeper truth, and so I got the opportunity to study various religions, study Christianity, of which I grew up in, have my own critical analysis of that, and come out the other side with something that was deep and meaningful for me. Certainly a lot, probably outside of the box from maybe many of my peers or folks around me.
Yeah,
but
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
I imagine that might have been quite difficult for the family relationships, the relationships you had with your friends at the time.
Yeah, I basically keep it pretty quiet to myself. I've been able to come to my own conclusions, and there's much I don't know. There's much I don't need to know. And so when the topic of religion comes up, I tend to, I don't shy away, but I don't actively engage in a lot. It depends. Most people who bring it up won't normally have some form of agenda or an opinion to share, where I'm much more interested to take the framework of what I've learned from all of my study over the years, not just at university, is to lead me into who I am today and to how I view the world and how I treat people. And I suppose it boiled down, my belief set to be is that I'm blessed to be a blessing to others, is that, and that no matter whom I meet, is my job is to bless and esteem them. And I think if I hold that in life, normally it leads to folks becoming curious about why I would care. And many people then ask, so what do you really think? Like, what do you really believe? And then that allows me to share quite openly when someone is genuinely caring about why I have a different framework or belief set in life.
Yeah, and so if I can ask, what do you genuinely believe?
Yeah, I would still accept today that, so I still come from what would be boxed down with still within a Christian framework. But the sort of the core belief sets of this, you want to know why I get involved in the environment and so on, is that I believe, I believe that basically we were put on this planet, and whether physical or metaphorically, we talk about Adam and Eve, and we were placed in a garden, and the mandate was to bring that to fullness, bring it to life, and we chose to do the opposite. We chose to self-seek, take what we wanted for ourselves, and ignore the things around us, and we've ended up where we are today. And so my framework of the bigger redemption is that our job in life is to bring this world to fullness, to serve and to create, and that I believe that our heaven is here. I believe there'll be more of it, but our job is to care for the planet that we've been given, and leave that for generations to come. however all that unfolds. But yes, so that's for me. It's I still have a belief and a faith in God. I would have grown up in a more traditional Christian sense, where the folks would have gone out to try to convert or so on. It's not really where one of the things I believe today. There's a Bible verse that said Christ died once for us all, and I embrace that all very openly. So I do believe in a death and a resurrection. I believe in a second coming. I believe in some of those things that are sort of core to what would be why I would still say I'm Christian.
Yeah.
But a lot of the other things I would hold very lightly, and I think our job here is to be a display of God's goodness, and hopefully people see something that they like and maybe want.
Yeah. You and I, so I'm Jewish, albeit pretty secular, and so I'm not sure, if I can put it like that, if I have a belief in the traditional sense of God. So I think about what you're talking about, maybe slightly more spiritually, if I can put it, rather than in religious terms. But one of my guiding philosophies is Tikkun Olam, which is it's a Jewish philosophy, and it has kind of many meanings and interpretations down over the centuries. But one of the ones that really appeals to me comes from Jewish mysticism, which is the story of creation. It's told in a different way, I suppose. God pouring his, and it's a his for the sake of this story, divine light into a kind of specially prepared vessel, which at the point of him doing so cracks and divine light kind of showers across all of creation. And so it's our role, and I'm not quite sure what our is in this context, but our role to find all that divine light and kind of bring it together into one place so that the act of creation can be completed. And the day-to-day interpretation of that is helping people, and this podcast is one way of doing that, find the divine light within them, what makes them special, helping people see their own gifts. And the way you talk about it really kind of helping people be great. I can't quite remember the words you used. They're much more beautiful than how I've just remembered them. But I think you and I share the same worldview where that's concerned.
Very much so. I think that's why when I did my studies, I wanted to be able to study the ancient texts in Hebrew. So I came to love the language. I think maybe you and I first, when I think it was my when I have my shalom was
that's right.
I sort of perked, what's that about? And and then the recognition of this was sort of like really when God blessed Abraham, as he gave him his shalom, he gave him everything so that he would bless others, and so I got this for me because they remember the deeper word of shalom is not just welcome, but it's to recognize that I've been given something, I've been given the fullness of God, and my job with that is to give that to others and to bless and bring that. So I have it on my arm, so that no matter whom I greet, I bless no matter what I do. The intent is to bless, and through that. So I think we share so much, and that's why probably some of the framework of where I would hold, spiritually, is much more shared and open than maybe some of my friends or brothers.
I'm in Northern Ireland, and I've spent a little bit of time there myself over the years. It's still quite a conservative place in many respects. So do you still kind of, if I can put it like that, run into trouble in conversation with kind of some of the beliefs you've shared? Yeah,
I do. I run into trouble, but typically with those that would come from a much more traditional, maybe traditional, I'll say, evangelical perspective.
Okay.
I tend to keep my mouth shut or not circulate a lot in the same circles. And I'm being quite open on this podcast, but I tend to just get on with life and do my thing, and hopefully display something where people see something a little bit different. They probably see something that's a little bit wild, and to go like, I think my conservative friends go, wow, I mean, how can he be Christian? I think, well, it's a little wildness in life.
Yeah.
And so I think there's, I do every so often, someone tries to corner me or push me on a particular point or something, and I tend to back off, and there are certain events or certain things that I just don't go to because I know what it'll be about.
Yes.
But when I'm with the average person in Northern Ireland, that's not the topic of conversation.
Yeah.
It goes back to maybe our earlier conversation, because most people I meet in life are maybe dealing with a little bit of pain, and the last thing they need to be done is told something or quizzed about their intellectual belief or what's in their heads.
Yes.
They care about what's in their hearts, what's in their lives, and they want healing more than anything else. And so I tend to err to that side. But it is Northern Ireland is, well, it is different than from when I grew up. When I grew up, it was very polarized in the 70s, 80s. But today, it's a lot more open-minded. I suppose in some ways because of some of the traditionality. I mean, a lot of things that happened in Northern Ireland were actually not really religion. It was more political. But because of the beliefs of certain communities, that could intertwine where it was a Protestant Catholic thing. It's not as much that as it is more of a political side. But so I think on the political side, things for the most part are more open-minded. You'll find the polar pieces where you want, I tried to avoid some of the standard news because they are so depressing.
I agree. But actually, just pausing there, that's interesting to me, because we are living in a world which is more polarized than ever before.
Yeah.
But yet, Northern Ireland is kind of an example, as we see it today, of a place which has been more polarized than most places in the world, but yet now is more open than it's ever been before.
Yeah.
And maybe an example for other countries to think about what the future might be and what might be possible.
Yeah, there's more. I think we grew up under that blanket or cloud, and like in Northern Ireland, genuinely is when the blue skies show, you want to enjoy them.
Yeah.
And we have, and somewhat today, there's certainly blue skies in comparison to when I grew up.
For sure.
And most people are taking the benefit of that and to enjoy it. I'd say Northern Ireland is one of the safer places to live and to be today. Have a night out in Belfast is one of the best fun nights you'll have in any city. I've travelled the world, and a Friday and Saturday night in Belfast is the best. You get the people are awesome, and the crazies like everywhere in every city. But it is genuinely a wonderful place, and I think can be a showcase for what's possible. The creative economy that's coming out of Belfast is amazing, which I had this conversation with some of my Israeli friends a while back, and we were going like, why is it we're so entrepreneurial? And that part of it is going to think, well, I think we've just become so resilient, that we grew up with so much pain and so much conflict. We realized we had to do something different. We had to make a difference. And so when things fail or things go wrong, we're used to getting up and going again. So it's a genuinely, I love Northern Ireland. I lived 20 odd years in North America between Canada and the US, but I absolutely love home. I just miss the California sunshine.
Yes, yeah. We actually are, having talked about Northern Ireland, still in the middle of your story about is the priesthood. Is that what the right term for it?
Yeah, it was a
Because you studied divinity and other subjects in university, but then you went a step further, right?
So I went on to become minister, and I specialised in more on youth work because I was young at the time, and to go into a traditional position, what I know about weddings and deaths and funerals, and I mean, I was so naive and young, so I ended up doing a lot with young people. I pushed the boundaries with that too. Yeah. The institutions didn't necessarily like me.
Were you too entrepreneurial for?
Yeah. I think I sort of realized that Mark put into a box does not work. Yeah. I mean, I can bring life, but I'll bring wildness, and I'll blur the lines. So I certainly got the attention when I think it was before anyone had done this in mainland UK. I started basically like a church within a nightclub, and so it was a nightclub was owned by a guy called Bill Woolsey in Northern Ireland. It was called the Boom Boom Room, and on a Saturday night they used to run. It was the hot spot back then, and but the night, Saturday night was called Sin. It was Sin at the Boom Boom Room, and I met these.
And Sunday morning.
I remember, all the suffering on Sunday morning maybe, but then instead of that on Sunday evenings I took it over and called it Spirit.
Yeah.
And I remember one night I'm standing there and there's a queue of young people coming in, and across the road I think it was the Baptists and the Free Presbyterians, and they got all these different denominations, all picketing and singing songs, Jesus and me, we don't agree, and all these like silly trite songs. And I remember standing there and feeling sorry for these people standing out in the rain, like, and thinking, and so I sent them over teas and coffees, and and at that time, it got a lot of press, and a lot of people didn't like what I was doing. But there's a lot of people that found a lot of life in that. And at that time, I remember Bill Woolsey saying to me, he said, Mark, I've never seen as much life in my club. He said, this is yours every Sunday night. I'll set it up, I'll pay for it, because I've never seen so much just health. There's no alcohol, there's no drugs. These kids are having fun. They're meeting each other. And so to have a celebration of life, I don't think there's much. Is there anything better? It was just to see them have that joy. Yeah. Between that and I did a few events with other folks from other denominations, so Protestant and Catholic in Ireland. We had an event called Desert Festival way back in the day, and it was very focused on peace and reconciliation. So to have bands there and to have Irish dancers and everything in the mix, it was sort of people didn't know how to think about it, and certainly the religious institutions at that time did not like, some of them, a lot of them did not like me or saw me as a bit of an anathema. So I remember getting the phone call one day from a chap saying that the 26 churches of Northern Ireland have met and they have agreed that I am not from God, and neither are my initiatives. Wow. So that was a hard pill to swallow when doing something good. But I was young, and if I learned one thing is don't touch religion in Ireland. Grew up a little bit before picking that fight. So it's a little bit, it runs a little bit deeper than what most of us think.
Yeah, grow up a little bit before you pick that fight. But have you picked that fight?
No. I think I picked the fight in my own way. Yeah. I live my life and do what I'm doing, hopefully demonstrating that it's purposeful and inspiring others to try and to do something what they see. I continuously encourage people to recognize those things in the world that don't work or that piss them off, and go make a difference. Roll your sleeves up and get involved in it or try and change it. Yeah. So I think in that way that's how I'll pick my fight.
Yeah, I love that. I want to finish talking a bit more about wildness, because it's definitely a theme of our conversation. We're both members of the 50 Club now.
Yeah.
But that has not diluted your wildness. So
no.
what does wildness look like for you in the next 12 months, 2 years?
Wildness, I've got a few things. I'd say One will be from a fitness perspective, I suppose, or from not fitness. I mean, fitness is fine. I like to stay as healthy as I can without becoming really boring in life. And so in January, I'm going away with some friends. We're doing this crazy adventure in Costa Rica. It's 250 kilometers of mountain biking, hiking, kayaking, multi-day from one ocean to the other. So we're all training now. I met one of the guys for breakfast yesterday, and we're all beginning to check out, going like, oh, he's looking a bit fitter than me. Yeah. So we're all dropping weight and training hard at the moment, because as a typical bunch of lads, we're all going for fun, but we're all extremely competitive. Yes. I'm doing that, and the other sort of wild, crazy thing I'm doing with a bunch of other folks is on the 7th of June. There are 26 high peaks in Ireland, and we're doing that over 9 days. We said we were going to do it in a week, and then the math didn't work. So we're starting in Donegal and working our way right around all of Ireland and finishing in Mayo and Cong and Mayo. Yeah.
That sounds like 3 a day to me.
It's a 9-day adventure.
3 peaks a day. Is that right?
Yeah, that's roughly right. Yeah. That's it's a little bit more complex than that, but yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And we've 12 to 14 hour days, I think, mostly. Wow. And we can't sort of be betting, as much as it's going to be the 7th of June, we can't be betting on sunshine. Northern Ireland or Ireland as a whole is just like, you never know. Yeah. So I am, fingers crossed, hoping we get some. So I've got those things coming up. I'm going to get, I'm also going to get married. I'm trying to plan something that's a little bit different, so I better not say too much.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm doing that, and then
that one on your head.
And then also for, I suppose, the wildness of life is that I certainly, from a work perspective, I love to bring that in, to mix things up a little bit, make sure that we're not just going down the normal path. So I love bringing in an element of surprise to my team, in the sense of not something negative, but we go, when we do offsites at different times, thinking, what about this? And I think most of the time folks are going, okay, that's just crazy. Why would we do this? Yes. And go like, well, because we can.
Yes, we're doing this for that very reason.
For that very reason, so that we can do something bigger, bolder, wilder in that stuff, because that's the stuff that allows you to wake up and gives you, feel a pulse in the morning and to go on. And so I do that. I box train in the morning. Got a wonderful community called Tribe that's back in Belfast. They've been fantastic. Those are the things that, and then with Louise, my fiance, I take her on wild adventures and fun trips and surprise all the time. And so that's just, I'm continuously doing those pieces. And now even more exciting is I've had my 2 kids have both been in Canada for the last bunch of years. My son 5 years, daughter 4. But daughter's now moved to London. Son's come back to Ireland at least for a season. And so now I'm beginning to think, okay, what's the wildness we can do again? Because I was living on borrowed stories, because we can only see each other a couple of times a year, where now this can be quite regular and do some fun things together, create more memories, create more stories on that. But I've done but I love doing the outdoor adventure stuff. But that sort of keeps me healthy, keeps me a little bit more, it keeps me regulated. Because otherwise, I do push,
but you bring all of that back into your working life.
Yeah.
And I can see how it's I can see I'm inspired by it, and I can see how your team would be as well.
Yeah. So recently, I was in Nashville for work, and I tied in sort of a weekend each side, sort of to squeeze it in, and brought Louise with me, and. I think she's been enjoying telling the stories of saying, well, we went to Nashville, and then we went to Memphis, and she said, let me tell you what we did. We did the Sun Record Studio. Yeah. We did, Graceland. We did 3 gigs. We did, we did Beale Street, we did all these things, and she'd ask people, so how long do you think we were in Memphis? And we folks said, what, for the week? She said, 36 hours. So I think that level of, I'm an obsessive planner, so I love seeing every moment and wild things and just create magic and fun stories,
Yeah. Well, listen, I've loved the stories you've been telling me and the audience today, and I'd love for you to come back in a year, 2 years' time, and tell some more stories.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.